Good morning. This is KSKQ 89.5 FM Ashland and 94.1 FM Medford. And guess what? This is Life Matters. And I want to say that I lost Wonder. And so when I don't have your mic on yet, babe, I'll put it on now. I lost Wonder 3 weeks ago, and it was so devastating that I couldn't come to work. Wonder is my pup. And you've heard her bark in the background if you've been listening. And so I got lots of, they even played a whole hour of dog songs for me 1 week that I wasn't here. So this is RENEE MIEREANU, if you don't know. And this is Life Matters, and I have a wonderful guest and friend, and his name is Derek Moody.
Hello.
Hello. I'm so happy you're here.
Well, I'm happy you invited me. Thank you.
Yes, and I hear we're being heard in Scotland.
We are being heard in Scotland.
In Scotland.
Yes.
You're not saying it right. You have to roll your R's and So.
What's up, Pat?
Hello, Pat.
Yeah, Pat. My friends Pat and Janine are tuned in right now in Edinburgh.
In Edinburgh.
Yes.
Yes. I love doing accents. So, the first thing I do, because this is a kind of a educational show, is to present a song that I play in the beginning of my show every single week.
Nice.
Sometimes I get excited and I forget to play it, but that's just being human. And this is a lesson in life, because life matters. And this is James Taylor, and it's the secret, big secret, of how to live life.
Wow, what a beautiful tune.
Isn't it stunning?
I have to admit, I've never heard that song from James Taylor.
Oh, it's my favorite for too many. I don't want him to say how many years.
I mean, I've seen Fire and I've seen Rain,
yeah.
But I've never heard that song.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very special, it's a really special song to me.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So that's where you got your radio show name.
No, I don't know where I got it.
Life Matters? Okay.
It came to me. It's a double entendre.
Oh, okay.
Life does matter, and it's about matters of life, which is why you're here, Derek.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. Believe me. You're a Piscean.
I am.
Oh, that means, let's see. I'm not very good at this, but I was married to one for too long.
Well, what sign are you then?
Leo.
Oh,
Leo.
Pisces and Leo definitely don't jive very well. I dated a Leo once, and it didn't work out very well at all.
No, it didn't. But we had children.
But I was great friends with Leo. Just with the relationship part didn't work. Friendly, we were great.
So you're very evolved. You're very intuitive. In my experience, this parts of you, talented. Incredibly talented.
Oh, thanks, Renee.
Art, and also extremely intelligent. So that's what I knew about him. A few other things that I'm not mentioning, but really, he's long gone. But bless his heart.
How long were you married?
Oh, how many times?
To the Piscean.
Oh, 10, 11.
Wow.
Yeah.
You put in the years.
Oh, yeah, I know how to do that. So you're, it's wonderful to have you. And you're from Peoria?
Yeah, originally Peoria, Illinois, right in the middle of the Midwest of America.
And you live in Ashland, Oregon now.
Yes, I've been out here about 12 years.
Mm-hmm. Me too, almost 13. You came here in 2010.
I did. I was flying back and forth from Illinois doing shows and recording, and then I decided to move here in 2011. So I started living here in 2010 really, but I moved here in 2011.
Yeah. And you have you're a veteran. You have a long career.
Next year will be my 40th year in music. Yeah. Wow.
And I know, isn't it amazing?
Crazy.
And you write music, you write lyrics, you you sing.
Well, I attempt to.
At 40 years is not an attempt, or 39. And you're various music, right?
Yeah, I started out doing punk rock, honestly, hardcore punk, and then just punk rock and roll, and then eventually I dropped out of that and I did a 360 and started doing straight up outlaw country. That turned into blues, and then that turned into pop rock, cover bands, then back to punk.
Wow.
And then, since I've been in Oregon, I've mostly done rock and roll.
Yeah, and you have a syndicated show. I mean, this is a career of a syndicated show called Church of Rock. So you put this out more than in the Rogue Valley, and right?
Well, what happened was it started out in Halloween of 1999. My general manager said, look, Sunday nights are a vast wasteland on radio. There's nothing happening at all. Make something.
Yeah.
And I go, what do you mean? He goes, I'm going to give you 2 hours every Sunday from 10 to midnight. It's yours to create something so it's not a vast wasteland.
Oh.
And so I took a little bit and I created the Church of Rock. And I tell you, this is the 8th different incarnation, the 8th channel it's been on.
Wow.
And I went from doing it part-time to being hired on stations, working 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, getting salary, and to working at KSKQ as a volunteer.
Yep.
So I've just kept it going for all these years, 23 years now, and I just enjoy playing music for people and getting to interview my heroes, rock stars. I get to play my own music.
That's right. You interview rock stars like I'm doing right now.
Well, I only interview people that I really have a genuine interest in. Like, I don't, like, people will call me today. I had a guy in Illinois say, hey, I've got some bands that would love to be on your show. And I said, do they have any kind of band, like, name? And he's like, well, not really, but I'm listening to them and they're good, kind of thing. So it's fun to discover new bands too.
Sure. Sure.
But generally, I try to go for the rock stars that have the names from the 70s or the 80s or 90s, and bring them on the show, and just it's fun,
This has been great fun for me too, and so I'm glad that you do that. So. The syndication is a lot of places?
No, actually, it's only one. It's KBOG Radio in Bandon. It's little town up in Bandon. And they got a hold of us and they said, we've been listening to KSKQ and we love the programming there. And they picked 4 or 5 shows, and then they ended up going with like 2, I think. And they said, we'd love to have the church on Sundays here. I said, oh, awesome. So the good thing about us being on 8 different channels is every time we've been on any station that's been live streaming, so people listen. So every time we go to the next station, people just follow us on the internet. So now, all these years later, 23 years later, there's some people that have never missed a show.
Oh,
it's crazy.
Wonderful?
And it's even though we are just volunteers, it's not like a living. It is for me. It's because at the end of the day, literally at the end of the day, we're not going to go, gee, how much money did I have or spend, or how much do I have in the bank? We're going to remember all the good times.
That's right.
I
have to volunteer in my life. I used to volunteer in a hospital.
Selfless service person.
Very much.
Good.
And
Seva.
I was, Seva it's called. You're right. I was a volunteer chaplain for 7 years in both Sante hospitals. And that was so deep, and it's edgy. This is easy compared to that.
Yeah.
And I also... spent 11 years as a volunteer in a full security men's prison.
Wow, how intense.
Taught a course called Love and Forgiveness, actually co-led at first.
Are you familiar with Ram Dass and his project,
Absolutely.
the prison project, where they go in and teach folks?
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
It was phenomenal. It was in Washington State that I got to do that. And
wow.
At first I went into a 12-step program that I attended a couple times a month, and the guys ran that program. And then I found out about Leonard Shaw, God rest his soul, he just died, and he created Love and Forgiveness. And Love and Forgiveness, we worked with mostly murderers, and we did Gestalt work with them, which means there was dialogue between in the middle of a circle between themselves, as if it were happening now, and their crime, and then they became their victim. And then we go back and forth, and there was so much healing. And I never not cried. Is that correct English?
Yeah.
I never not cried.
Wow,
every
that's
time.
intense.
wonderful.
But good stuff, though. I mean,
It is.
very deep work. That's,
Now, wait a minute. I'm interviewing you. I'm sorry.
Hey, I'm interested in you too.
And now I get, well, say one more thing. Now I'm going to go to school at this age. I'm only 27. Not true. I don't know where that came from. I pulled it out of somewhere. But I am going to go back to school, and I'm going to become a facilitator, a therapeutic facilitator for psilocybin and MDMA.
That is awesome.
Becoming legal only
Yeah,
in
people,
the state of Oregon.
Yeah, in the state of Oregon, what they in other places call the psychedelic mushroom is not treated as if it's like some pariah. It's treated as if it should be medicine.
Yeah, and it's not legal to grow your own or take your own trips. That's not legal. There's really a lot of hoops to go through to even produce it.
Yeah.
And even
and you're jumping through them.
I'm not going to produce it, but I am going to learn. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm so excited.
That's great work.
It is, because for clients that can't be soothed, no matter what they try, this works.
Yeah, it absolutely works. The research backs it up completely. They say that psilocybin is the quote-unquote fountain of youth, especially for older folks. They say those dark corners of your brain that are not used like they are in youth. It's sort of akin to having like dark corners with spider webs, and it kind of cleans all that out, and it kind of brings you back into like remembering that you're not over it or out of it just because you're older.
That's right. And I have to read this, and I forgot, and you know what it is. This is a disclaimer. So I have to say this on the air. We have to be formal. Any views or opinions expressed here are solely those of the host, that's me, and the guest, that's Derek Moody, and do not necessarily represent those of KSKQ Community Radio. Let me say KSKQ, all volunteer community radio, and KSKQ's mission is to produce community radio that empowers the residents of the Rogue Valley, that builds sustainable and resilient communities through the exchange of ideas.
Shang-a-lang.
Shang-a-lang. So that's really important, that what we're talking about is our opinion. It has nothing to do with the station.
Absolutely.
Since we've talked about stuff that...
Yeah. Controversial
yes,
stuff.
Very. And actually 80% of the citizens in this town want this here.
Yeah. I certainly want it.
So tell us tell me something. How do you conjure up a song that you want to write?
When I write, I like to write best on the spot. I'm one of those people that works best under pressure. So somebody will send me a song and say, hey, here's a song that's completed, but it doesn't have a title and it has no lyrics. I'll sit down and listen to that 2 or 3 times, and then within 15 minutes to a half an hour, the lyrics are completed and there's a title. I don't think I've spent more than 15 or 20 minutes in my life on a song.
Oh my goodness, I just got chills.
Isn't that weird? Some people will spend like just weeks writing lyrics. I'm like, I'm just in and out, boom.
It comes through you.
It's just, that's what I like to do. I'm a word man, you know?
That is so wonderful. And how about, tell us some things about when you were a lead singer. Or are?
Well, I've kind of retired, but I'm still doing projects. But basically, I fronted many bands over the years, and I actually.
Name a few?
Well, I have a gig coming up in Ashland. Which is going to be happening at the Black Sheep Pub and Restaurant, September the 3rd, opening for the legendary Richie Ramone from the Ramones. Hey Ho, Let's Go, Blitzkrieg Bop. Sheena is a punk rocker. Rock and Roll High School. Those guys are just amazing, and Richie Ramone's coming to town.
Yay! So
me and some friends are getting together to do an opening act, which is going to be great, and I'm excited about that.
The whole show is from 6 to 8?
I believe, no, that's my radio show time.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
I think, I'm not positive, but I think that show starts at like 8 o'clock that evening.
Oh, yeah, that's what it said. No,
Yeah.
It doesn't say what time. So our friends from all over the valley can go to Black Sheep Pub and Restaurant on September 3rd, opening for Richie Ramon.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. He played in Medford back in 2015 and sold out the place at Howie's, and it was a blast, and we opened up for him there, too. It was really fun.
So I'm kind of ignorant about certain things like this. So what's his axe?
Well, Richie, when in the 70s, was in a band called The Shoes, and he was a part of the early CBGBs, the very first part of the punk rock scene that started him in America. And then he later joined the Ramones on drums, writing some of their better stuff in the 80s. He did a lot of records with them. Later, he left the band, and ever since then, most of them have died. He's kept on the name and the tradition and their exact energy, and instead of the Ramones, it's Richie Ramone, but they do tons of Ramone songs. He's a phenomenal lead singer and drummer, so it's a really high energy, really fun, just rock and roll show,
So this is, let's see, the September 3rd. It's coming right up.
It is. Yeah, I'm excited.
And so do they have to make reservations?
Yeah, you have to go, you can call the Black Sheep Pub, or you can go to Eventbrite, Brite, I believe, and just type in Richie Ramone to get tickets.
.com or .org?
I think so. I'm not too sure. I know it's Eventbrite.
You'll find it.
But Richie Ramone tickets, they can be obtained through the Black Sheep, I believe, as well, and they can give you, the information.
How much are the tickets?
I'm thinking they're $20.
Oh, my goodness.
Very affordable.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's another band called Go Betty Go. It's an all-female band that's on the road with Richie as well. So you get 3 bands for $20. What a good deal.
And it's Ashland.
Yeah.
So Ashland.
It's going to be a blast.
Yes, that's so great. I'm so glad I'm having you on now so that we can tell folks about it. I know you'll say a lot about it on your show on Sunday nights from 6 to 8 p.m.
Yes, ma'am.
KSKQ.
Yes.
This station. This wonderful volunteer station. What a wonderful thing. Let's talk about your Fanatic. We're only halfway through, so we got lots to talk about.
Fanatic Records.
Yeah, label. That's a great name.
Yeah, the Fanatic Records is because I'm a music fanatic, so I thought, why not just be obvious about it?
Right.
So in 1997, I started the label in Illinois, did a couple of records like vinyl. Then we did some vinyl records.
What's vinyl? No, I know it.
It did get kind of lost in the shuffle, didn't it?
It did. Go ahead.
Then we released some CDs. The label kind of took a hiatus for a while, but then I decided to do a tribute to my friend who I consider like an older brother over in Scotland, Pat McGlynn, who was a former member of the Bay City Rollers in the 1970s.
I didn't know that.
Actually in the 80s and 90s as well for about 16 years. But Pat is one of my heroes, and so I thought, you know what? I want to do a project for fun and just a labor of love. So I did a tribute to my friend, and he was blown away and happy by it, and so many other people were affected by it, and so many great bands from the UK and the USA volunteered to be on it, including members of Tom Petty's Heartbreakers, the Black Crowes, big names like that, and just some really amazing musicians. And so, I brought you a copy as a gift.
Thank you. I know. I'm so excited.
It's called Skies Are Blue, a tribute to Pat McGlynn, and I really like that album a lot.
Oh, Pat. Patrick. Is he at the...
Patrick.
Patrick. That's great. A tribute.
Yeah.
How wonderful.
Just a labor of love.
Wow. Tell us more about your career. There's so many little things, not little, but big little things that you've done, maybe a little anecdote of something that you recall.
Basically, my mother, as a young kid, turned me on to music very, very young. In our house, the tradition was wake up, have breakfast, put on a record, clean the house, or do whatever you do, but there's always a record spinning with music.
Yep.
So our house always had music, whether it was pop, country, blues, rock and roll, but mostly rock and roll.
Yeah.
And my mom was a rocker, so we rock and roll together. And when I got older, I just naturally drifted into that sort of realm, and was in chorus in high school, while that lasted, and then started doing bands, and very quickly started playing with bigger kind of bands. Next thing you know, we're opening for big name bands like Nazareth, Cheap Trick, national acts and stuff, and. But what's funny is in 1999, I was in radio, and I got a call from Epic Records, and they said, we're scouting your band. And I said, wow, okay. And they said, yeah, we don't know what quite to do with you. You're kind of a cross between Iggy Pop and Marilyn Manson. And I'm like, what? I was blown away by that comparison. Really weird. Anyway, I decided that I didn't really want to be a rock star, because we had just had a child, 4 years before, and the people I know that have made it as rock stars were never home.
Yeah.
They did not ever get to form relationships with their children, and my biggest thing in my life was being with my daughter, and to me it was appalling to think of being on some bus for like 8-9 months out of the year and never being with my kid.
Right.
And it literally gave me the heebie-jeebies, and I thought, nope. So we went to Cleveland. We were on tour. We were in Cleveland, Ohio we flew there in some major storm, and I was still drinking at the time. This is like back in the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
And I sabotaged the show on purpose because I didn't want to be a rock star. I'm like, if we get signed, I'm going to be taken away from my family. So I told the band I quit, and I just didn't want to have Epic Records sign us. And when I tell people that, they're like, are you kidding?
Are you kidding?
But they don't realize that it's all illusion. Most of the people I know that are really famous aren't really that happy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Money does not buy happiness. It can buy a lot of freedom, and it can buy you a lot of pleasure, but it won't inevitably buy happiness.
That's right.
So
have to create your own happiness.
Exactly. And
it's an inside-out job, not an outside in.
Yep. And being with my family, I was happy doing that. Being on the radio, I was happy. So I decided in 1999 to quit music. From 83 to 99, I quit finally and did radio for 5 years solid, and then got back into the music business again. But
doing what?
Punk rock. Rock and roll.
Awesome.
But we also, during the years, I switched over to country for a while and had a band called the Renegades that was a working band, playing 3-4 nights a week, 4 sets a night, steel guitars and all.
Wow.
Great. Did cover bands for a while, doing just cover songs to make a living, and then went back to doing rock and roll again. And then
tell our audience what a cover song is.
A cover is when you do somebody else's song.
Music,
you go to a bar, and most bands are doing most other people's songs to keep you entertained with songs that so you'll stick around and buy beer so the owners can make money. So most bars don't want original bands because they want familiarity. Right. They don't really encourage original acts in bars. So it's very tough to be a band, because if you want to be original, you've really got to have passion and be willing to stick it out and play for 2 people maybe, here and there.
Yeah.
But eventually you'll find yourself doing whatever you manifest in your own mind if you keep it going and you have the passion,
That is so brilliant. Yeah, I have a friend that sings so well. She's just amazing. Her husband plays guitar, and they're older folks, but great.
Yeah.
And that passion is so important to play out.
It is.
That's a term, to not just play at home, but play out.
Right.
So I'm really supportive and love her. She's a great friend.
Nice.
Yeah, and her husband. They're wonderful.
Nice.
So I understand what a cover band is, because that's what she does. Sings music.
Through the years, I've done stuff like write songs for movie soundtracks. A couple of those along the way.
What movies?
There's one over in the UK called Spy Darlings, which stars Lloyd Kaufman, who's done a lot of films in America. The guy that played Charlie in the original Willy Wonka movie,
cool.
He's in it. There's a lot of really, not strange, but just different types of personalities in the movie.
Yeah.
And we wrote the title track to the film, Spy Darlings.
Is that the name of the track?
It is, and it's actually on YouTube. The song's on YouTube, so anyone can type in the Bloody Mess Rock Circus Spidarlings.
So Spider Lings.
It's, yes, S-P-I and then Darlings.
Oh, Darlings.
Spidarlings. It's a gothic sort of song.
Wonderful.
And there was a movie that came out in the States called Creeper, which was filmed in Ashland, actually. It was a horror movie, and we did the title track for that one as well. Both of those were released on DVD. I think Spidarlings was released on Blu-ray, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, which I've never seen the movie because I don't have a Blu-ray player, so...
Oh my goodness! I wonder if it can be converted.
It probably can, and I really want to watch the movie bad, but it's been out since 2013.
Wow. And it's still out there?
It is.
That's
they just reissued the soundtrack, the anniversary soundtrack, like maybe 6 months ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. There's so much to learn.
Right?
There's so much to know.
So much going on.
Life does matter, doesn't it?
It does.
It does.
Because without it, what do we have?
Nada. Nothing.
Yeah.
You know, nothing's not bad either, but we're going to talk about that in a little while. We're going to talk about Ram Dass. We're going to talk about anything you want to talk about.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me on. Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I should thank you.
We met at one of the KSKQ meetings where everybody gets together once in a while, and I had never met Renee, and she invited me on the show. I was super honored.
Oh,
you know.
Well, I'm honored too, Derek.
I've only been the guest on not that many radio shows in the last 10 years, maybe 3 or 4.
Oh.
So thank you.
Oh, honored. I'm the one who's honored. So, how about, let's talk about the Church of Rock, because where did you come up with that name?
Well, when my boss says, hey, create something on Sunday nights, I thought, what is rock and roll? I thought, surely it's an institution. And I thought, well, it's not like a school. It's not a mental hospital or a jail. But it's kind of like a church, because a lot of people find happiness through rock and roll. Right. Whether it's rock and roll like, say, James Taylor type rock and roll, whether it's hard rock type rock and roll, somewhere in the middle like blues rock. But somebody's got some kind of happiness with rock and roll. And a lot of people find their happy place with music, and that being rock and roll. So we decided that the Church of Rock should be a show that represents all rock and roll.
Yep.
It's the stuff that my mom listened to, and the stuff that my daughter listens to, and the stuff I listen to. So we literally only play stuff that we genuinely love for the most part.
Right. And your adorable wife, Sister Tracy.
Thanks.
I love that you're the Reverend and she's the sister. It's so smart. It's such a unique title for a show.
Thank you.
And it's irreverent.
That's
and
funny.
I love that.
One of my bosses, the one that got me ordained legally, said to me once, she said at WIHN Radio in Bloomington, Patty Downspach, who now lives in Washington, she said, you're so irreverent. You're the irreverent reverend, because why don't you get legally ordained and start doing like rock and roll weddings? And I go, that's kind of cool.
That is cool.
And then I did, and then she came to me and she says, now I've got a great idea. I go, okay, give it to me. She goes, you're going to do a mass wedding. And we're going to get all the news stations from every ABC to Fox TV. I go, okay. And she goes, I'll set it up. So she comes back a day later. Okay, I've got a bowling alley. We're going to have each couple stand on a different lane and call it Lover's Lane.
Oh, my God. That's so brilliant.
6 different news stations, every single affiliate, like ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, they all showed up. And I was all over the news in the Midwest as this guy that was doing mass weddings, and I married 13 couples legally that day.
I've seen my teacher Amma marry a bunch of teachers. Yeah, Amma's wonderful. I've known her since 2000.
Wow.
Yeah, and I've seen mass weddings that she's done. So look what you did.
Beautiful.
That so
I love Amma, by the way.
Oh, I love Amma too.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's always in
I have not met her, though. I have not been in her presence.
Well, she hasn't been back to the States, but she travels all over the world, but not since COVID began. And she's a hugging saint, by the way, guys. And that means that she hugs you. If you hugged her, she would have a crippled body, because I've seen her hug for 16 hours without stopping. I've been there and watched her do
Just
that.
people in line.
People in line, and she emits this love that is so pure.
Absolutely.
And she's just phenomenal. And now she's in her 60s, which means she lives in India, in southern India. But she has ashrams all over the world. Ashrams are like places of gathering, I would say, and holy talks, but mostly Hindu, and it leans a little toward Buddhism too, but she's a Hindu teacher.
Yeah, I really relate to the Hindus.
I do too.
Yeah.
And you know, anything we say here.
Yeah. Back to the
us.
disclaimer.
Yeah, back to the disclaimer. She, have you seen her in videos or?
Oh, I've read a few books about her. My friend Nico Brown, who just moved from Ashland not too long ago, goes to India and stays with her for like 6 months out of the year. I think I asked you about him before, if you guys knew each other, which I don't think you do. But I learned a lot about Amma from him, and then I read the few books about Amma. I started doing my research online, and then, of course, DJ Starlight, Nicole, she's a big proponent, a devotee of Amma. So through all these sources, Amma is very close to my heart for sure.
Oh, my goodness. She's such pure love. And she taught me that I am love. Not to worship her, even though it's very, very formal how the guru is worshipped.
It is very tricky to get caught up in those illusions of like worshiping her instead of yourself, and because guru and devotee are the same. So that is so tricky. It's such a hard thing as a Westerner to get around it sometimes. Yeah,
and opinions, are like orifices.
What a great one.
We all have one. So, some people don't go for it and other people do. And, I think she taught me so much about being authentic, and that's what I endeavor to do in my life.
I think the biggest stumbling block that I see for Westerners when it comes to spiritual things is a lot of them were taught the wrong version of God, I know this is going to get me in trouble, but just talking about these things is controversial.
Any views or opinions expressed here are solely those of the host, that's me, and the guest, that's Derek Moody, and do not necessarily represent those, I'm having you pause, of KSKQ Community Radio. So
I think a lot of folks were taught by self-serving people that were not necessarily living what they were preaching, or practicing what they were preaching. And if you grow up seeing that, and you see that on a predominantly large scale, your image of God's not going to be very positive.
So that, instead of saying you, say I. So would you do that for me? Say I instead of you. I know you're referring to yourself, but it's easier to own when you're not telling someone else who they are. So would you do that for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great thing to shift in language. Yeah.
Right.
Is that okay?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. So that's, of course, our own individual opinions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have to be careful, but we're good. We're good. You guys that listen to us understand.
Absolutely.
We're good. And so when I lived on the Big Island, Hawaii, for 14 years,
awesome.
and I drove around the Big Island, I would listen to Ram Dass. I would listen to, I'm giving my age away, cassette tapes in my little MR2 that I drove on the Big Island. And I listened to Ram Dass over and over and over.
What a wonderful teacher.
Wonderful. And authentic, very authentic.
Yeah, he was definitely the real deal.
He was. He's
definite American yogi,
And Bhagwan Das was with him too, who is a musician.
Yeah, and he's actually on tour right now doing satsang. He was in Connecticut last night.
Wow, satsang means gathering of people again.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this, but it's my opinion, worshiping themselves, which is not narcissistic. There's a real difference, right?
It is.
Yeah, it's like we're all a part. That's what James Taylor said in this song we just played. We're all a part of everything.
Well, like Ramana Maharshi said, there are no others. You know, you probably remember the story about the devotees talking with him, and they're like, well, what about the others? And he's like, there are no others. Just, that blew me away, you know, something so simple, but yet so profound.
Well, Maharshi lived on a mountain called Arunachala. That's the way I say it. It's probably said differently. And he lived in a cave, and he had one piece of clothing, which was a kind of a sari type thing that he wrapped around him. And he had one bowl, and he was a hermit for a long time.
And then his mother came to live with him eventually.
Did she?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that. And his devotees created an ashram or a church or however you want to call it.
Yeah.
At the bottom of that mountain, and he would come down.
So
and
beautiful.
He taught in silence mostly. You know, a lot of energy.
Same with Baba Haridas.
Yeah,
he's another. I love him so much. He was my favorite silent saint. Like, not to shift subjects,
no,
but
it's fine.
I'm reading a book by him, and I just love him.
Yeah, and why do we love these teachers? Why do you?
Because they represent something that, especially in the West, they say that if you incarnate in the West, it's one of the hardest incarnations. You know, some people choose to incarnate in a predominantly spiritual place, like say Tibet or India, where you can actually live these spiritual practices and not be considered like like having psychosis. Like in America, you're considered a real fanatic if you're too spiritual here. It's like, wait, we worship the dollar here, buddy. That's where it ends.
God, that's true.
But it's just silly. Or sports stars, you know, or rock stars.
Or actors, for that matter.
It's true. But I always tell my friends that are like worshiping the rock stars, and I say, look, remember, even the guys that you consider like the most enlightened rock star probably died of drugs. Because they were looking for what we're looking for, but they were looking in the wrong place, like a lot of us do and have. But when we turn to people like Ram Dass, we're turning in the right direction.
Well, one of the things that I can say in words about these amazing teachers is that they teach in a dichotomous way, meaning it's paradox. So there are two things that are happening at the same time. They're totally different from each other, but they're both true.
Yep, the universe is a definite paradox, and most things that we think are bad are good for us, and most things we think are good for us are bad for us a lot of the time.
You could say I in that one.
I got to practice that.
Yeah, it's really interesting to own. I try to do it. I rarely say you, because people say, "You're what? You're talking about me?" No, I'm really talking about me.
No, that's really, I really like that. I respect that.
Thank you. I don't mean to correct you on the air.
No, I think it's, I'm open to learning. I'm not so egotistical to where if I'm taught something, I'm going to put up a wall. I'm going to melt and go, thank you.
That's right.
And so if I learn something profound, I keep it with me and teach others, you know?
Right. I'm reading here. I want to know about your record label and the recent release, and that's called Skies Are Blue, and we talked about that. It's upcoming in Scotland.
Yeah,
and Japan.
Well, I'm heading over to Scotland September 13th, 14th, to hang out with my friends, Pat and Janine. And Pat and I are recording some new music. We're doing an interview on a show called Roller Mania on a Friday night, September 23rd. And Pat and I are bringing Pat's acoustic guitar, do a little acoustic set. Pat's being interviewed, and they're going to hopefully play a lot of his music from the 70s and 80s and stuff, and excited. And we're meeting with a promoter, Japanese promoter, and we are hoping, and we think it's going to happen, that we're going to be on tour in Japan in 2023. So that's the plan.
Oh my goodness, that's great.
So we've recruited some of the folks. We've called some of the folks on the Skies Are Blue album, including Phil Jones from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, who's agreed to play drums. Jim Wilson, who was with the band Sparks, Henry Rollins Band, and some others. He opened for Van Morrison last week in Belgium.
Oh my goodness.
He's Pat's guitar player, so it's like this all-star band, and we're pretty excited because Pat told me himself, I had no intention of getting into this pop thing again. Wow. I said, so I'm both a curse and a blessing to you. Yeah. So we're trying to get Pat to Japan in 2023, so that's part of my big scheme.
So I have this weird thought, and that is, are the Scots going to understand you? Because sometimes they talk with marbles in their mouth, and we can't understand them.
Well, that's interesting. When I first became friends with Pat, I found it very difficult to understand him, and he knows that we have, and he would ask me, "Do you understand me?" And I'd say, mostly. And then I would notice that he would talk slower, and I'm like, awesome, he's trying to meet me in the middle here.
Isn't that nice?
It is, but we're both super hyper, like very just energetic people from the minute we wake up kind of guys.
Yeah.
So when we start talking, we're both talking a million miles an hour, and I'm like, this is perfect. I'm going to get along with this guy great in person. And I do understand his brogue very well now.
Yeah,
very well.
There's the brain accommodates.
Yeah, I started.
I love the brogue.
Well, then if Pat's feeling mischievous, he'll send a text and he'll spell out like an entire sentence how it's talked in Scotland. And I'm like, you're out of bounds. Oot, nay, what? What is this? I don't know what you're talking about, but this is funny. But I love the Scottish language.
It is beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Yeah, I dated a Scot for a while. Scot.
Did you really?
Yeah, just for a while.
Interesting. My legal last name is McLeod.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. You got some of that in your blood.
I've been wanting to go to Edinburgh literally since 1975.
A bucket list.
Well, Pat McGlynn was a poster on my wall when I was 10.
Oh.
And I've been managing him now for 2 years, or
Oh my God.
quote unquote managing. We're friends,
Yeah.
but it's just bizarre the things we manifest.
Right.
If you think about something long enough your whole life, it seems like it's very plausible that could possibly happen.
I have done that in my life. I can see myself completing, being certified by the state of Oregon, and helping hundreds of people.
Well, with all the 40 years of your work, and you wanting to be a part of this new psilocybin thing that's happening for psychological help for folk, healing, it's only perfect if that would happen for you.
It will.
And it is happening.
It is happening.
You're in the midst of it.
I am. And I was accepted out of 400 people. There
Wow.
were 25% that were accepted, and I'm
Really? It's
totally blown away.
It's only like 100 of those people were accepted. Well, congratulations.
Yeah, isn't that? It just blew me. Away.
I can't wait till you get your legal thing going, because I want to be one of your first clients.
Oh, good.
No, really.
I'm gonna do
Sign me up.
I'm going to do it. I have to work in state certified space. I can't do it on my
Okay.
own.
But whenever that happens, I would like to definitely...
Set it on the air, folks.
I need help.
Yeah, there has to be, as far as I know so far, I haven't started school, an agreement to do this, because it really opens the mind. But
Yeah.
it's so healing. It just heals people.
Yeah, and
It's controlled, and that's very important. There are two therapists that sit with someone for several hours, so that person is not alone.
Oh, okay.
And it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I've seen, actually, there is a Netflix, remember our opinions, there's a Netflix show called How to Change Your Mind. It's 4 episodes.
Yeah, I've been watching those. Yeah, I just watched the peyote one, and I watched the LSD one, and I watched the
Psilocybin and MDMA.
the MDMA one. I have not watched it. One of them I haven't watched
You're
yet.
going to love that. That's
Yeah.
the psilocybin one.
Yeah, one of my favorite things I've ever done is mescaline.
Yeah, mescaline is a synthetic of peyote.
Yeah.
And in that last episode, the Native Americans beg us not to disturb that holy plant.
Wow.
They ask us, as haoles, we call them in Hawaii. That means what?
Oh, I'm familiar with that term. I've been to Maui and called a haole more than once.
Haole, man. I've been called a haole too. I will tell you what haole
I
means.
respect the Hawaiian people and the culture so much, and I'm very, very aware and educated on the history, and I just can't believe that travesty. I just, whenever I even think of it, it brings me immediately to, same thing with the Native Americans. It's
We
just
stole them.
unbelievable
We stole
imperialism.
Yeah. And actually, would you like to know what haole means? We're almost done with the show.
Yeah, what does haole actually mean? This
Okay.
is what they call you in Hawaii when you're
White.
when you're a white person in Hawaii, because we pretty much stole their lands.
Right. So aloha is honoring the breath in you that's in me. So it's like namaste. It's, I honor the breath that's in you that dwells in me, or the God in you that dwells in me. So that's what aloha means. It doesn't mean goodbye and hello. It means an honoring of the other individual. Ha'ole,
Aloha spirit, yeah.
So ha'ole, ha is breath, and ole means none. So when they call us howlies, they mean we have no God in us.
Wow.
And I had to really overlook that and call myself a howlie because it's part of the vernacular. But in fact, it is a huge racial slur. One of the biggest racial slurs.
It is, and we almost have to accept it.
We have to. It's not
because they had to accept their slaughter,
well,
you know.
they did.
So we have to meet them halfway with our ego and just let it be.
Oh, I just let it be. I always said, I'm a wahine haole.
Yeah.
You know, always, because that's the way it is.
It is. It is very complicated stuff, you know. But the bottom line, though, all our hearts are connected, and everyone.
That's right.
Sometimes I get a little irritated with the fact that some people just will not let the past go. They should let it go at some point. At the same time, it's very tricky. I don't know. I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, but I just wish we are all able to let go of past pain and just heal together, but it just does on so many different levels and groups and individuals, and I just think it's so hard to do, but I wish we could do it. I wish we could just somehow find a way to just heal and go on instead of always having to hold somebody accountable for someone else's sins of some other fathers.
Yeah, we begin, it's our nature to be victim.
Yeah.
And when I let go of victim most of the time, when Wonder was killed, I bathed in victim because I was in so much pain that my dog was, I said murdered, but killed. And so I let myself feel all those feelings, deep sadness, rage, everything, instead of holding them in. And that really helps me to accept that she's not on the planet anymore.
Yeah.
And we were like bread and butter.
Oh, bless your heart.
So, but there are lessons in everything that happens. The good things, if you will, the joy of rescuing her and having her for 2 years. She had one eye. She was an awesome girl. Actually, Tracy
was totally telling me about that little dog. Yeah.
So, she was so gorgeous. And it was time. And I could victimize myself. I could victimize her. I could hate the man that didn't control his dog. But I don't.
Yeah.
Because why? What does Amma teach? What does Ram Dass teach?
There you go.
You get to talk about Ram Dass until the show's over, and it's almost over.
Well, basically, a long story, but I'll make it very short. I was an atheist my whole life. In 2011, when I moved here, I told my friends, there's a reason I'm moving to Oregon, and music is merely the catalyst, but I don't know what the reason is. Mm-hmm. Well, one day I was in Barnes & Noble. I walked by a book on the bargain shelf called Hinduism for Dummies, and I walked by and I chuckled, and I'm like, Hinduism? What is that exactly? I don't know. I didn't know what it was, honestly. So I bought the book, went home, and I read it all in like a day or two, and I couldn't believe it. And my mind was blown by some of the stuff I read. And it said at the end of the book, if this book resonates with you, you simply must read one of the oldest scriptures known to man called the Bhagavad Gita.
Right. Ooh,
so I was like, about 15 years ago, I was going to Mexico, and I was in the airport, and some guy with a little dot on the middle of his forehead that was Indian came up to me and sold me a book I did not want, but I gave him a couple dollars for what was at least a $20 book. I couldn't figure out why in the world he would sell it to me that cheap. Put it away. Well, all these years later, this Hinduism book tells me I need to have a copy of the Gita, so I went through every book I owned, and the last book I found was a brand spanking copy of the new copy of the Bhagavad Gita. And this was mind-blowing to me. And I'm like, I'm going to choose to see this as not coincidence. So I started reading it, and I looked on the internet on how to read the Bhagavad Gita. It said to read it contemplatively, unlike a novel. And so I did that for a year, and I was able to understand it. And all those years, I'd kept trying to read that book, and it made zero sense. And I completely, I would say 80% comprehended it in my mind. And then it led me to Autobiography of a Yogi with Paramahansa Yogananda. A day after I finished that book, I was taking Tracy somewhere, and I'm wandering around this little area in Phoenix, and there's a little door with a sign about an inch long, and it says, Paramahansa Yogananda Temple of Word. I'm like, oh, you're kidding me. So for the next 2 years, I ended up getting hooked up with the Self-Realization Fellowship people. Yeah, and now they're in Ashland, by the way. What? And I painted the temple for them.
Where is it?
It's right over behind the Ashland Armory. In the same building, there's like a yoga center.
Wow.
And SRF meets every Thursday and Sunday there. And they're having like a commemorative to Babaji this Sunday. Babaji.
So tell us who Babaji is.
Babaji is a saint, yogi, and a saint from India that is the stuff of legend, but it's purportedly, according to most accounts, does exist and still exists and has for like 1,000 years. George Harrison was hardcore into Babaji.
Some people think we're crazy, you know.
They do.
They do.
And we might be.
And we are.
But my ex-yoga teacher said, hey, you know, the deal is everyone's crazy, but there's happy and there's sad crazy. And he looked at me and he goes, buddy, you're so happy crazy.
So happy, crazy.
And there's people that are sad crazy.
I'm going to play a song now. And it's a wonderful song. And it is another song that has meaning in my life. So I always play it at the end of the show.
So we're closing up. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here. I didn't know we had so much in common either.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It went by quick.
It does. It just flies.
Yeah.
Because it's only an hour.
And we're both talkers.
Yes, we are.
It's fun. It's fun to talk.
It's like having a phone conversation, I think.
Yeah.
In person.
I don't have many in-person conversations like this, so I want you to know that I appreciate it, and I really got a lot out of it.
Me too.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play this song. This is Steve Forbert, and it's he's a great, I'm sorry, Steve, old musician from what year? What years?
Oh, I remember that song he had called Romeo something.
Yeah, Romeo's.
Oh gosh, we looked it up earlier. Yeah, I haven't heard that in years. Oh my Lord, Steve Forbert. Yes. Wow.
So I'm going to play a song of his called, which I believe, You Cannot Win If You Do Not Play. And that'll be the end of the show. And hopefully Ralph Nader will show up after this. Thank you, everyone.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Good.